Late in the evening on August 30, 1918, Vladimir Lenin stepped out from a meeting at the Hammer and Sickle Factory in Moscow. A crowd of workers swirled around him as he moved towards his car. Just as he reached the vehicle, 3 shots were fired in the darkness. The scene dissolved into chaos as workers scrambled for cover and Lenin collapsed onto the running board. 2 bullets hit him, one in the left shoulder and another in the neck. He survived, but only because he had turned his head a fraction of a second before the impact. Amidst the confusion in the courtyard, authorities detained a woman named Fanny Kaplan. She was young, disoriented, and apparently surrendered without a fight. This single chaotic arrest of an obscure revolutionary would set off a chain reaction, changing the trajectory of the Russian Revolution and the nature of the Soviet state. During her interrogation by the Cheka, Kaplan made no attempt to hide her actions. She told the secret police, "Today I shot at Lenin. I did it on my own. I had resolved to kill him long ago." Her path to that courtyard began years earlier. As a teenager, she had been a reckless anarchist, participating in direct action bombings against the Tsarist regime. But her ideology had shifted. She was now a loyalist to the Socialist Revolutionary Party, and she viewed Lenin's recent dissolution of the Democratic Constituent Assembly as a betrayal of everything the revolution stood for. The Bolshevik response was swift. At 4 a.m. on September 3rd, without a public trial, Kaplan was executed in a Kremlin garage. Her body was stuffed into a barrel and burned to ensure no remains and no martyr could be found. The government considered the case closed. However, a closer look at the physical evidence reveals glaring impossibilities in the official narrative. If we move past the interrogation protocols and test the Bolshevik story against physical reality, the logic of the crime begins to collapse. Consider the assassin herself. In 1906, Kaplan was nearly killed by a premature bomb explosion in a Kiev hotel room. That blast left her functionally blind. During her decade in a Siberian labor camp, her eyesight deteriorated so significantly that she struggled to see in broad daylight, let alone aim a pistol in a dark, crowded courtyard from 10 feet away. Hitting a moving target under those conditions is difficult for a trained marksman. For a woman who was semi-blind and had never handled a firearm, it was nearly impossible. Then there is the lack of testimony. Investigators questioned 18 witnesses who were at the scene, and not a single person actually saw Kaplan fire a weapon. The weapon itself was another ghost. When Kaplan was arrested, she had no gun on her, and no weapon was found at the scene until much later. The scientific evidence is even more damning. 4 years after the shooting, doctors finally extracted a bullet from Lenin's neck. Forensic analysis showed that the bullet did not match the Browning revolver the Cheka claimed she used. The state's primary evidence was a fabrication. Since the ballistics and the shooter's physical condition both contradict the official story, we have to ask why the Bolsheviks were so desperate to believe their own fake narrative. The answer lies in the macro survival of the regime. In the summer of 1918, the Bolsheviks were surrounded by enemies, and their hold was fragile. To the party, the facts of the crime were secondary to its utility. A wounded, martyred Lenin generated a surge of public sympathy. And hours earlier, the Petrograd secret police chief, Moisey Uritsky, had been successfully assassinated. Together, these events gave the government the necessary political cover to launch a coordinated crackdown on all political opposition simultaneously. The attempt on Lenin's life provided the exact political pretext the Bolsheviks needed to justify an era of systemic retaliation. On September 5th, the state formalized this violence with a decree that officially launched a campaign known as the Red Terror. Cheka head Felix Dzerzhinsky wasted no time. Using the shooting as justification, his forces executed over 800 socialist hostages without trial in immediate retaliation. The rhetoric from the state press was chilling. They urged the public to turn their hearts to steel and drown the bourgeoisie in rivers of blood. This was no longer about a single assassin. The Red Terror rapidly expanded, claiming tens of thousands of lives as the Cheka exterminated entire classes. Whether Fanny Kaplan actually pulled the trigger is almost secondary. Her presence in that courtyard gave the Bolsheviks the license they needed to dismantle their rivals and construct the foundation of a new police state.